good to have you here, Chris. So we have a lot to talk, right?
We do. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So tell me a little bit, and it has to be a little bit, right? Because it's so interesting about your life and how you became an entrepreneur.
Well, to begin with, I've had 29 years with my husband and 4 children, and those 29 years have been really tough. We've had a lot of illness and a lot of hard trials like cancer and suicide, and I have always been an entrepreneur.
Even during the difficult times.
Even during the difficult times. And all 29 years we've had our own business, and we've been able to be really financially stable and have had great success being in business, being entrepreneurs, and still getting through the trials.
Mm-hmm. But it came a point that you decided also that with your business you could impact the life of many women entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that process.
Well, there were so many times that I'd gone through tough things and really difficult times, and people would say, how are you so strong? How do you do this? How do you still stay in business? How can you balance both? And I just got really good at it.
Tell me one of those challenges that you went through about your son.
Well, my son, he was my oldest child at the time, was 9 years old, and was diagnosed with cancer. He had a brain tumor, and over 11 months, we spent 180 nights in the hospital. And we were self-employed. At that time I had a daycare and a preschool, and I had to hire people to come in while I was at the hospital, but I still was able to keep my business going. I did have to bring in some employees, and I did have to do some things differently, but I found a really good way to balance both business and my family and our medical situation. And we were able to really do really great things during that time.
During that time you spent 198 days at the hospital. It was not the only time, right, that you had to go back to the hospital with that kid? No,
in fact, during that 180 nights that we spent in the hospital, my daughter at 18 months old, her head didn't grow. So there were times when he was on one floor of the hospital in ICU, and she was in a different floor in ICU with her head. They had to take her skull off and fix it and put it back on. And so it wasn't just one child sick, it was both. And as we got to the end of our cancer treatment, my husband had a really bad ATV accident with a severe head injury, and was not the same person for 2 years.
Wow.
And we were in the middle of remodeling our own home. We were building a home, and because of the medical bills, we got to move out of our house and live in a trailer. So we lived on site in a trailer, ran a business, and had medical issues.
So at this point, you were running the business by yourself, right? Because your husband was recuperating, and you had one employee or somebody helping you.
Right.
Now, what about the emotional part? Because it's funny, we all face some challenges in life, right? But sometimes you see entrepreneurs that the nail breaks, and they go into, oh my gosh, I'm on depression because of that, right? How did you cope? Because in your case, it was pretty tough, right? You were having issues with 3 loved people, and so how did you manage to even think about business when all this was going on?
Well, the first thing that I had to decide was, what would happen if I didn't? And sometimes we don't look that far into the future. We have to look and really assess, if I don't do this business, where will I be? And that tends to make a big decision for you. After I decide what will happen if I don't, then I look at the point of, if I'm going to be depressed and if I'm going to let it overtake my life, what does that show my children? How do they benefit from me having a pity party, or me going into, depression and not functioning? And I know that because I've done it both ways. There was a point when my son was doing better, my husband was doing better, and my twin brother committed suicide. And I was very tough. I got to go sleep with his kids and his wife because she wasn't coping, and I got to go take care of those kids at night and then run home and do my business. And I did that for about 6 months. And the minute that I quit serving somebody else and making that a priority, I went into depression. And I was totally in bed, don't bug me, I don't care.
Why do you think that happened?
Because I quit trying to do stuff for other people. I made it about me.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because I know that's a big part of you, right? You believe in serving. And it's interesting, because in entrepreneurship, many times we become selfish.
Exactly.
Right? It is about competition, it's a jungle out there, and I don't even know if it crosses our mind we should be serving. So talk to me more about that.
Well, the first thing that I would like to share with that is that serving can be in a lot of different ways. And the biggest lesson I learned was that when I found out it wasn't really about me, I do a whole training on it's really not about you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you learn that in this life we tend to get selfish, but the more selfish we get, the less we get. Mm-hmm. The more we give and the more abundance that we share, the more we receive. And once you can get that concept in your mind to be like, how could I go help my competition? How could I make suggestions for, well, this company would actually be better for you. You get more referrals. Mm-hmm. People go, oh my gosh, if they aren't the best one for me, they tell me who is. And you get more business. And it's amazing once you open up the natural laws of our universe of how what you put out is what you get back. Mm-hmm. In teaching a seminar, I do a thing on what kind of questions do you ask? It is proven that the person asking the questions is the one in control.
Right.
And you probably know that from doing your show. The person asking and finding out about the other person is the one that's really in control of the situation. All of us love to talk about ourselves.
Yeah. But
the person that will ask the right questions and listen is the person that's speaking trusts. They now feel like they can trust you. Mm-hmm. And you can say, oh, remember when we talked about this? And they're like, they really care. Mm-hmm. So you really do get more business. You do get people to trust you, and you do have better relationships.
Right, I agree. I would also like to add that we train ourselves then to ask better questions.
Exactly.
Because that impacts everything, from you making a sale or not, to attracting the right type of customer, to attract the right kind of vendor in your life. We have to exercise making better questions all the time. Don't you think so?
Yes, always better questions. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's been said that your network equals your net worth. Mm-hmm. And so the more people that you can influence and that you can have trust you and that you can have a relationship with, the more money you're going to make. Mm-hmm. The more that will be in your bank account. And so the better your questions, the more you have in your bank account. Right. And that's really true. There's a lot of times that people think, I'm shy, I don't want to talk to them, or I don't want to do this. But if you really get good at asking the right questions and listening for their answer, one of the things that I've also learned is that if it comes from my mouth, it's my opinion. Mm-hmm. If it comes from your mouth, it's fact and truth.
And truth, people will believe. Let's go back to serving a little bit, because when we, you ask entrepreneurs, and I think because we have to incorporate things on a deeper level. If I ask, especially women entrepreneurs, if you ask, what do you do, why you do this? It's very easy to hear, because I want to help people. And really for me, that's blah, blah, blah. Okay? Because we have to be sure where things are in place. And right. If you have a business, it's supposed to have a profit, and you're there to make money. Now, when we are talking about serving, on which level are we really talking? It's not just, I want to help people, because that's not going to take us anywhere. That's just talking.
It's just talk.
Give me some examples on how we can do this.
The example that is probably the easiest to see the difference is my son when he was in the middle of cancer. Mm-hmm. He was 9 years old, and any boy that's 9 years old, 4th grade, does not want to be at the hospital 180 nights. Of course, yeah. At all. He'd rather be playing football, and he was the baseball star. He was the pitcher. He did not want a brain tumor. He did not want to sit there. And so rather than haul him to the hospital every week and have it be a big negative, I had to come up with something different. So we came up with a balloon idea. And it became a game. We went to the hospital, started his IV, started the process, and then we went down to the gift shop to buy a balloon. And the first time we bought this balloon, pretty funny story, 9-year-old boy, he of course picked a pink congratulations balloon because he had no idea what we were going to do with this balloon. And I just said, no, we're going to play a game, pick a balloon. Well, we took that balloon, and the way that this happened was that we had to find the right patient in the hospital for that balloon, which a pink congratulations balloon for a 9-year-old boy meant girl, and congratulations isn't really a popular thing in a children's hospital. So we went room to room, and we found a lot of people that were a lot worse off than we were.
Mm-hmm.
But we did find the right person. We found a girl that was her last chemo treatment. She was going to be done with cancer, and it was the perfect person for that balloon. In the process of doing this, we continued this. Every time we went to the hospital, we gave out every balloon that they had in the gift shop. But it helped everybody.
Mm-hmm.
The doctors were getting involved. They were happier. There was one doctor that had no good bedside manner, and he got so into the balloons of, who can we find? And I know my patients. And it was so cute to see.
Good. That's
The
good.
nurses were involved. They were happier. Everybody got better treatment on the whole floor because there was something to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
As people came back to the hospital that had gotten a balloon and saw us, they were, it's the balloon people. And really, all we did is bought a balloon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we didn't have the money for the balloon. We were buried in medical bills.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a really hard time. But the abundance that came back to us, because we'd buy that balloon and buy that little animal and tie it to it and go find the right people, we were able to see, and for this 9-year-old boy, he was able to see people that would never leave the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
kids that would never walk again, and that would never have the kind of life he had. And for him to see the opportunity of how it could be different, just by buying a balloon
Mm-hmm.
and visiting some people. That was an act of service that is not something you're going to see in a book. Oh, buy a balloon and it will
Yeah.
be this act of service.
Uh-huh.
And yet it had a huge impact on a hospital for almost a whole year,
Mm-hmm.
to where it became this thing. And when we would go back every 6 months for our treatments, we still are known as the balloon people. We still are the people that went out of our way to make a difference for others.
While you were going through all that challenge.
Well, we were in
Yeah.
just as bad as a situation as most of them.
Mm-hmm.
And when we had 2 kids in the hospital, it was even worse.
Right.
And yet,
Mm-hmm.
my kids thought it was fun. You know, my younger kids were like, no fair, we don't get to pick the balloon, we don't get to pick the people.
So
we don't
you
get
actually
to go."
changed the perspective of the whole
Exactly.
family into going into the treatment. Instead of being a problem, it became, okay, it's a chance for us to have fun,
Right.
interact with people. That's very cool. Let's talk a little bit about guilt.
Okay.
Okay, because you said you were dealing with your own immediate family issues, then the cousin's problem, at the same time running a business. Did you feel guilty at any point?
I think as women especially, we always feel guilty. And the other thing that I think with guilt is that as an entrepreneur, we take that on as mothers, as, oh, I'm not with my kids, and I'm not doing the right thing, and I'm spending too much time. One thing that I've learned is that guilt is one of the lowest frequency energies, and it slows us down. It'll make us feel overwhelmed, it will make us feel depressed, it will make us feel heavy, and not be as productive.
Mm-hmm.
And so the longer we hold on to the guilt, the worse it is. So if we can turn that, so rather than we feel the guilt, we actually flip it and see what good we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
What are we able to do for our kids because we are an entrepreneur, because we're working, because we're financially bringing in more money?
Mm-hmm.
What are we able to provide? Are we clothing them? Are we giving them things that they feel their necessities of life? Are we teaching them good habits?
Mm-hmm.
When I was an entrepreneur and we did this, when my kids got a little bit older, we actually set them up in business. And
Really?
they started their own business as high school boys and made thousands of dollars.
Really?
They got really, really good. All of them had at least $10,000 in the bank by the time shortly after graduation from high school.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to save half of everything that they earned, so they only got to spend half. But if they saved $10,000, they had earned a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And it helped them with, my kids served a mission for our church, but they also had that money for down payment on a home, for education, and they learned to speak to other adults. They learned to bid a job.
The socializing part, right?
Right.
They're not all the time texting?
No,
No, your kids are not?
no, and
Wow.
Nintendo games were not the only thing they could do.
Yes.
They could go out and get a job anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been able to be very productive and be self-sufficient.
So that's interesting because we have most of the kids coming out of school, college especially, I think the average is $100,000 in debt. And they work years and years without being able to pay that. And you're telling me that instead of feeling guilty for the fact that you were a mother entrepreneur, you paid attention to developing that entrepreneurial mind in your kids. And they didn't go through the same challenges that most kids do, because they had the money to pay. They could at least help pay, right? And they could do other things that were important to your family.
Right.
I mean, it's that simple. But we usually choose just to feel guilty. Oh, I'm not spending enough time with my family.
Right. And what you said is choose, and that's very much what we do. We choose to feel that guilt. And the faster that we can change that and see what we are accomplishing with life and how it's blessing our life rather than making it heavy.
Making it a problem when it doesn't have to be one.
Right. You can make it positive. And you brought up these kids come out of college with $100,000 in debt. Here's an example. My youngest son, he graduated high school with an associate's degree in college. He had a master's degree before he turned 21 from Westminster College, which is not an easy college, and it's very expensive. He finished completely with school with less than $20,000 in debt for his education. And he's only 23 now, owns his own home in Arizona, and is quite a bigwig in his job, and has moved right up the ladder. Did he learn anything by being an entrepreneur? He learned a lot. He learned skills that have just had himself through school. I mean, a master's degree by 20 years old, and I'm very proud of him for that. He has moved on and is just moving up that ladder, making a ton of money at 23 years old, because he was taught skills to, this is what you have to do, this is how you have to do it. I mean, I made my kids keep their own books. I would oversee it, but I made them help me when it was tax time. I made them, sit down and be like, okay, so we got to pay their employees. They had employees. We had a lot of skills that they learned by having them do their business and to learn what it took. Now I've got one that works for the city, and mostly because it's my son that had cancer, and he's very hard to insure. So he works for South Jordan City, but he does side jobs all the time. He still has a separate entrepreneur business that he does after hours, does sprinkling systems, does different home repairs and things, because he learned early that if I want more money than I'm making at my city job, I can do this, I can do this, I can do that. And he's able to take care of himself.
Right.
He can repair things, he can do things. And
this is actually a guy that had the brain tumor for 3 times, right? The 9-year-old was the beginning.
9 years old, he had the brain tumor, the first for a year. We did surgery, chemo, and radiation. And then 18 months ago, he crashed a motorcycle and broke his back on Labor Day. 8 weeks later, he went back to work for 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, and he still had headaches. And they kept saying, well, the vertebrae that you broke in your back caused headaches. So we were doing massage therapy. We were doing about anything that you could do to get rid of a headache. And during Thanksgiving, we love to play as a family, so we went to Moab, and he could hardly sit up straight. His headache was so bad, and he lost all of his sight in his right eye. So we came home from Moab over Thanksgiving and started seeing the doctors on Monday, and he had a brain tumor. And that brain tumor we removed in December. 8 weeks later, he went back to work. He worked 3 days, and he actually blacked out at work, and they said, no way. It was actually 2 days and 2 hours.
Wow.
His 3rd day back to work, and we took him back in for MRIs, and the tumor had grown back. So we removed it again February of 2012, so last year, and then again in June, the tumor had grown back again a 3rd time. So we did, last June, we took surgery, and then we did radiation again.
Okay.
So he's had cancer, actually 4 brain tumors now, but this last 3 was the same brain tumor growing back. But they wanted him to be disabled. They wanted him to, to take welfare. They wanted him to do this whole thing, and he was just like, no, I'm 27 years old. I don't want to live like that. And he is back working for the city and
doing
working
his
full
side
time.
business and
does a side business.
Which is important.
Owns a home.
Okay. So even if all your kids decided to go get a job, they would still have all the skills from an entrepreneurial mindset.
Right.
And really, that's the point we want to come across, that it is important, you as entrepreneur, that you show that good side of your life and, social skills that we have to develop and up to your kids, because, you're just doing them a favor. So stop the pity party. right?
Right.
And start seeing the good side of that.
And don't go to the guilt. Start seeing that you can teach your kids many skills. You can teach them, the important things to watch for. You can teach them what they're good at and how to build upon that and to be able to do what they like and what they enjoy for their life rather than, oh, I have to sit in a desk. My daughter has had things a little bit different because of her health and her situation. And she just was down to college and was working for a company where she has to sit in a cubicle and talk on the phone. And she would love to be out in the outdoors. Oh. And she was like, I can't do this. I can't work for somebody else. I need my own thing. She recently was in a car accident and, of course, has head injury problems. And we had to bring her home. So she's been home for a few weeks with us.
Okay.
And she's looking to, when she's feeling better, going down to Moab and being a river guide.
That's
she
fun.
Wants to go. She loves the outdoors. And so if you can start to see what your kids are good at, what they enjoy, what they would love to do, rather than, I have to grow up and get a job.
Yeah.
I have to go do this, or my boss is making me do that. They can start to see if you're an entrepreneur. You're your own boss. If you want to take off at 4 o'clock every day, take off at 4 o'clock every day.
Just make sure you work later on another time.
Right. If you're putting the other hours in.
Yeah.
A lot of times with an entrepreneur, you put a lot more hours in than just an 8-hour day. But you also get to take the time off that you want. And you get to schedule your time the way you want. So rather than make your kids feel like, oh, I have to work more and it's harder, teach them that, hey, if we work really hard this week, we get next week at Lake Powell. And that's what I taught my kids. Work really, really hard now and get really good at what you're doing and then play there. So we always say we work hard and we play hard.
Nice.
So
nice. One more thing. Let's talk about overwhelm. Because that's a common complaint among entrepreneurs, right? I'm overwhelmed, and especially with female entrepreneurs, because we are always multitasking, and for sure you're also taking care of family and other things. That's very common. How do we deal with that?
Well, with overwhelm, we kind of like with guilt, you need to get to the bottom of what's happening. Are you really behind? Have you overscheduled yourself? And can you do everything that's on your plate? If you look at your plate and it's too full for anyone to handle, delegate. Get rid of some of that so that you are not overwhelmed, because you will be unless you take care of it.
So we can put in between parentheses, no, you're not the only one that can do this. We can outsource.
Exactly. And do what you're good at. One of the first things that I did was get a VA, because I do okay on the internet. I can do my own things, but when I've got to create websites and put this video here and put that there, that is not my best thing.
It's just going to waste time.
And I get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so the best thing I can do is be like, hey, take 10 minutes, throw this together for me, send it back. It cost me $10, $15, and it's done.
Yeah.
And it's done right.
Yeah. And you can use your time developing.
Right. You can use your time better.
Yeah.
And once you start to see why you're getting overwhelmed, if you can start to see if it's how you're scheduling your day, are you taking you time? Everybody needs some time, whether it's a gym membership or a spa treatment or getting your nails done or just lunch out with a friend. You need to have balance. And as you balance it and as you delegate and as you find what you're good at and you get down to a system where you know what you can accomplish and what's actually workable for you and your life to balance your kids, your husband, your family. And maybe you don't have kids at home, but is it the animals? Do they need to go for a walk? What is it that you need to do and what you enjoy doing, and balance that with being an entrepreneur? And most of the time, you'll find that life is actually happier when you figure out what you're really good at, what you enjoy doing, and you don't have to do the stuff that you don't want to.
Oh yeah. Why?
If you're not good at bookkeeping, don't do it.
That was the first thing I hired. I'm terrible with numbers, which is not a very good thing for an entrepreneur, but it happens quite often. First, I didn't even have the money to pay the bookkeeper at that time, but that was the very first thing. Because comes some time of the year, people cannot do anything because they're so busy doing numbers and doing them the wrong way.
Right. And did you find relief when you got that?
Oh,
Even when you didn't feel like you could afford it?
No question.
Right. That's the first time I paid the VA, I was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? But yet the relief of knowing it's done right and it's not what I'm good at, and I can delegate some things out. And you can get creative. you can find out on your taxes, how much can you pay each child? What can they do? Can they clean the office? Can they do things and get a paycheck? And make it to where it's a benefit for everybody, so that the kids feel that they know they have something too, and they feel the quality of what's going on. They learn what has to happen. They feel better about themselves if they're able to help and contribute to what's going on, rather than be like, Mom, you're always doing that, and you don't ever get to go to my soccer game. Yeah. You know, if they were to help, and then everybody went to the soccer game and came back, it's a lot better situation.
Right, it is. I would like to add something. The fact that we don't need to feel busy all the time. I see with my clients quite often the need to be busy, right? Because I don't know if you could tell better than me, if it increases our self-worth, what is it? But we have to be busy all the time. When we don't, because actually being busy gets in the way of growing. Right. We have to be doing what's necessary, like strategizing, seeing the big vision and seeing what is necessary to implement that. Right. But it's very easy to be overwhelmed because you're extremely busy when you don't even need to be.
Right. Look at what you're doing and see if it's moving you forward or keeping you stuck. Yeah. And that's, if it's keeping you stuck, reevaluate. Because you should always be in a progress moving forward. Yes. So that you could work less and make more, or work better and make more, or work less and make more. Yeah. And be able to accomplish that and make your business thrive, rather than sit here and be like, I gotta do this.
Spinning wheels again, like a hamster. You're not employed anymore, but you're still a hamster. Yeah, very good.
I use the example all the time of Facebook. Facebook can be a very good tool. Facebook can be a big waste of time. And you have to decide how to do that. And if it's a waste of time one day, but you connected with 4 friends that you haven't talked to for a long time, rather than go to guilt, go to, oh my gosh, that was so great. But now that I've done that, I don't need to do that again for 2 weeks.
Exactly. Not every day.
So it doesn't have to be an everyday thing that sucks your time away and where you feel like, I'm busy but nothing's happening. Because that does happen when you're an entrepreneur. The phone rings and you spend too much time on it. That was one thing when I'd have people calling me and they wanted to, get fixed over the phone for free. And I finally got to where I would just set a timer. The timer would go off and I'd be like, I'm really sorry, I gotta go. Yeah,
we use here at the office one. You have to control. Time is our most precious asset.
Right. And that is just a way to manage time. Just to be like, you don't have to be rude, just say, I have to go. Because you do. You have a phone call to make. You have a computer, item to change, or to do something in your business, and you get to do your business and make it a priority. You can't talk to them that long while you work for somebody else. So make that same standard when you're self-employed.
That's fantastic. Now I know you have a gift to our viewers, right?
I do.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I do. On my website, if you want to go to allthingspossible.biz, you will get 3 hours of free training, and it also comes with my 6 traits for all things possible. And that's 6 traits. And we've talked about a few of them. A couple of them are gratitude, service, and not talking bad about yourself. How many times do we say, oh, I'm so stupid, or I always do that,
terrible.
Or I'm fat.
Training your brain to think that way.
You will create the reality that you tell yourself. So if you tell yourself good things, you create good things. Tell yourself bad, you create bad.
That's perfect.
Because your mind wants to be right. Your subconscious will help you be right no matter what you're saying. So go to my website and you can just opt in, put your email in there. You will automatically get the 3 hours of training. You'll get 3 emails, 1 a day, and there's a 1 hour training on each of 3 of those emails that you'll get for free.
Okay, so 3 hours of free training, allthingspossible.biz, and you also can get in touch to know more about Chris and her work, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been amazing.
Yes, it was an amazing story, and I learned a lot. So thank you very much for being here, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.